Okay. Mats, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Welcome to Vancouver.
Thank you, Tara.
Have you been to Vancouver before?
I have. It's a beautiful city. Yes, indeed.
Oh, great. Well, I wish we could be here in person, but obviously that's not possible right now. So this is our next best thing.
Okay.
I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, I was born and raised in Sweden, and like you, Tara, yeah, my dad was a pastor,
Hmm.
and I worked internationally basically all my adult life. And I guess I'm a little bit entrepreneurial. Started a number of things, a few dozen organizations here and there across the globe. Last 5 years or so, my wife and I had two bases which resonate with you too, Sweden and Singapore. And we really love Singapore. And of course, when we're recording this, it's Chinese New Year. And so that's a special thing, especially in Singapore. My wife is American from Alaska. So, and she's an expert on human trafficking issues. And she's very entrepreneurial. She started an organization in Greece, and then a pan-European organization with a few hundred organizations in 50 countries working together. And then thirdly, a global trade association of 100 plus businesses fighting human trafficking. So, and her name is Jennifer. So sometimes we work together on like business solution, business as mission stuff for fighting human trafficking. And my title, which I tend to forget, but I'm the chairman of BAM Global, BAM standing for Business as Mission.
That's great. Well, so much of what you said resonated with me personally, and I'm sure it's going to resonate with everybody in our audience who's going to be watching this. So we're so excited to get into what you have to share with us. But first, when you're not doing BAM, Business's Mission, what do you enjoy doing?
Cooking.
Oh,
I love cooking.
what would you cook?
Uh, I do mainly sort of European, French, Swedish. My wife does more of Asian cuisine. So now we're doing, of course, some Chinese things like the yusheng, which if Singaporeans would know what that is.
Mhm.
Today we had steamboat yesterday.
Ah,
So, and to me, I love, for me, cooking is all, it's part of a composing. So that I don't like shopping apart from grocery and wine shopping because that's part of composing a meal. And then
okay.
thinking through, a three-course meal and decorating, thinking theme and stuff. That I really enjoy
Yeah.
cooking. And then reading, you may detect some books. This is not the library. This is the dining room. Uh,
Oh, well, I can't wait to see the dining room, the library. Then one day we'll all come over for dinner and we'll all have great conversation in the library.
Absolutely. So you get about 7,000 books to choose from.
Ah,
So
dream.
welcome over. And then the third thing that I love doing is walking in nature, enjoying silence and solitude.
Mm, lovely. Well, we have lots of that here in Vancouver. Not always
Yeah.
the solitude, but certainly the nature.
Yes, true.
So tell us, how did you get involved with Business's Mission with BAM?
Uh, yeah, good question. And of course, there are several contributing factors, but let me mention two sort of pivotal events that really catalyzed me into this. I was involved in the Soviet Union while there was still a Soviet Union. And of course, when the Soviet Union collapsed December 91, one country became 15 countries, one currency, 15 currencies. And during the communist times, everybody had a job,
Right.
not necessarily meaningful or productive. But after that, unemployment and underemployment skyrocketed exponentially, 30, 50, 70%. And being involved in, especially in the stans, in the Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and so forth,
Right.
I just saw how this was fairly devastating. How can we as Christian meet these needs? What does it mean? What are good news for people who are unemployed? Because
Yeah.
with unemployment comes all kinds of issues like labor migration, human trafficking, domestic violence,
Yes.
drug issues, and all that. So I started then in the 90s, mid-90s, a process and that led to the Central Asia Business as Mission consultation. And then I got invited to other countries and continents, could you set up something similar? And then I thought, well, maybe I should start a global think tank on this topic.
Yeah.
So I did. The second thing that was important, this was more conceptual but very, very important, was Rwanda, the Central African country. And in 94, in spring of 94, of course, it was the genocide, about 1 million people killed within 3 months. And Rwanda was of course one of the ultimate success stories in the history of the church and missions. In less than 100 years, it went from 0 Christians to 90% of the population going to church, which meant that the genocide, it was Christian killing Christians. And what's wrong with this picture? And this forced me to think, how do we define success? If success is, getting people into church and church activities, not wrong per se, but if that is our sole criteria,
yes,
Rwanda was it. But it was also the ultimate failure of the church. And if you combine that then with what is good news in Central Asia to the unemployed, and how can the gospel transform ethnic relations, the marketplace, business, and all that kind of stuff, and that sort of triggered me, we need to do something.
Wow. I mean, we could spend a lot of time. There's a lot you just touched on there. And those are really, really important conversations. I'm so glad that we're having this conversation. And I'm so glad that we are willing to approach these big topics with the humility to say, where did we go wrong?
Right.
And how can we make it better?
Right.
Yeah. So that we don't continue to repeat the cycle. So with all that in mind, what is BAM?
Right. It's an acronym for Business as Mission. And that is a term that now is in swung across the globe in English. Of course, there are 6,000 other languages. So the term is not the point. People call it different things in different languages. And it is a term. But what is important is the content. What do we mean by it? And that's what you're asking rightly. So let me share sort of 3 things that we mean when we say BAM, or Business as Mission. 1, it is a concept. And it's not a new concept. So, I'm not claiming it. This conference is not claiming it. We invented something new. This really goes back to, Jewish thinking, Judeo-Christian thinking, and we see throughout history that there've been deep thinking and thoughts on what is the relationship between God, people, profit, work, dignity, and all those kinds of things. So in our day and age, we've then developed a BAM global think tank, and we produced 30 different reports engaging about 400 people in 50 different nations, thinking through what is this? From a biblical perspective, from a practical perspective, from an economic perspective, from a global perspective, from a strategic perspective, from a church perspective. And so we've developed then, verbalized, what does that concept mean today? 4 things.
Okay, tell us.
BAM 1. It is one God, one Lord. And if Jesus is Lord, he should be Lord of everything, including my business and the marketplace. So which means I take my Sunday talk into a Monday walk.
Yes.
I connect the dots, the Sunday and the Monday, recognizing that God is Lord of Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and so on. BAM 2. That is that dual dimension. Whatever we do for God and for people. And that is really following Jesus' example. He said, what you've done to the least, the lost, and the lowliest, you've done to me.
Yep.
We can't disconnect and say, well, I'm just going to love people, but not care about God. Or I'm going to be super spiritual. I'm loving God, but I'm not going to care about the homeless person in my neighborhood. Those are connected. So BAM is then doing business for God, with God, and for people.
Yes.
BAM 3. 3 biblical mandates. which we all have, regardless of what we do. But we are then trying to apply that into the business world. The creation mandate. God is the creator God. He created good things for himself and for others.
Yeah.
And after each production day, what did God do? He did quality control. He said, hey, these are good products. I like the zebra, I like the moon, and I like the Himalayas and Vancouver. I'm going to twist that very nicely. And he did. So, and we are created in his image to be creative, to create good things, products and services in business for him and for people.
Yeah.
That's the stewardship thing of some of us have been then created to be creative in business. Some in music, some in cooking, some in writing, some in child rearing.
Yeah.
But that's and the second mandate is the great commandment: love God, love your neighbor.
Yeah.
Again, the dual dimension. But then we ask in business, who is our neighbor? We have a lot of neighbors in business. It's that we should show practical love. It's kind of a litmus test. How do I treat my staff?
Yes.
How do I treat my customers? How do I treat my suppliers? How do I treat my competitors? How do I treat the river that runs through the town where I have my business? How do I treat the tax authorities? How do I treat the community? How do I treat the family?
Yeah.
And so that is the Great Commandment. And then the Great Commission is the third mandate, which is when Jesus is saying, and that, we are to think globally. The third mandate is the Great Commission. It's about this global thrust to all nations, to all peoples. So we're doing business, not just thinking, what can I do locally, but we're thinking also of other parts of the world, not just because we want to be exotic, but that's part of what we are called to do, because God so loved the world, and that is the whole world. So that's the third mandate. And number 4 in what is BAM is 4 bottom lines. Believing that business should have a holistic impact, that it can have a holistic impact on multiple bottom lines for multiple stakeholders, the many neighbors. So we talk about BAM being intentional in planning and operating and evaluating your business so it becomes a blessing financially, socially, environmentally, and spiritually to people. And that's the 4 bottom lines. So we say that businesses shall serve people, align with God's purposes, be good stewards of the planet, and make a profit. People, purpose, planet, profit. That's the 4 bottom lines. So that's the BAM concept. Then, of course, secondly, we have the BAM practice. So businesses are taking these principles and concepts and are shaping and reshaping their business accordingly. So BAM is a concept, it is a praxis, and then thirdly, it's also now a global movement. And it's not one big organization that runs everything. It is, sociologically speaking, a movement, like the abolitionist movement or the civil rights movement, or for church people, charismatic movement. It's something that is sort of beyond any person's or organization's control. And this movement can be characterized with 3 words that all starts with poly, which is a Greek prefix for many. Polydirectional, polycentric, and polyglot. It doesn't have one center. It's polycentric. It has centers in Korea and Brazil and Indonesia and India and so forth. Polyglot, BAM exists in many, many different languages, and it's polydirectional. It's not from the west to the rest. It's from everywhere to everywhere.
That's important.
Yes. So it's not a Western thing. I mean, now we're talking Canada, and Canada has an important role to play here. But then we need to understand that there are already a lot of BAM initiatives coming from other continents.
Yes.
Yeah.
So why should people get involved in BAM?
Good question. And again, being a Westerner, I'll let me speak in bullet points, not because Jesus did, he never did, but I'll give you 3 points anyway. um, why BAM? Well, God wants it. So, if we want to be followers of Jesus, yeah, let's walk with him into the marketplace. Secondly, the world needs it more than ever during and post the pandemic. Just because of COVID, 100 million people have been thrown into absolute poverty again. And we're looking 10 years since the Arab Spring that totally changed the Middle East. What catalyzed that whole uprising in the Middle East? Unemployment, dysfunctions in business and the marketplace. And if you look at some of the biggest needs in the world, whether it is poverty, youth, human trafficking, unreached peoples, and we can take a number of variables, often they are related to lack of jobs.
Yeah.
The world needs it. And if we're going to be relevant as Christians, how are we going to serve? And that is doing like Jesus, because Jesus never told anyone who came to him, you have the wrong kind of need. He didn't say, sorry, I got a spiritual ministry, so if you're hungry, sorry, nothing I can do about that. No, he met that need and said, this is the kingdom of God being manifested.
Yeah. If anything, he started with people's physical immediate needs.
Exactly.
And then talked to them about a more spiritual conversation, but he always started with the body and the immediate needs.
Exactly. And that is the what we're trying to do in BAM. How do we manifest the kingdom of God? How do we meet needs of the people, serve them, and thus also serve God? So world needs it. And then lastly, thirdly, God calls people to business. It is a holy calling. It's a ministry in its own rights. So if God calls you to business, rejoice. That is your highest calling. If God calls you to be a pastor, fine, but we need to get that going, that recognize and affirm and equip and deploy business people to service. That is business as mission.
That's great. That's really, really good. So looking forward, you mentioned briefly, some of the movements already that we talked about, social movements, political movements, even church movements that have happened in the past, that have shaped where we are today. So looking forward, what are some of the major challenges and opportunities for BAM?
Right. Yeah, so this is macro issues, but let's and also related to movements of societal transformation. One of the major challenges we still have is that whole mental paradigm shift we need to have. Breaking down that sacred secular divide, connecting Sunday with Monday, recognizing that business is a ministry in its own right. So getting our thinking aligned, because BAM is not a technique, it's a worldview and a lifestyle.
Right.
And so it starts here. And that is one of the challenges we need to work on. The second one is, of course, business solutions. We need business solutions to environmental issues. We need business solutions to fight human trafficking. We need business solutions for all kinds of things. And this is where entrepreneurs should think, it's a God-given gift. I can solve problems with this. And then another challenge is, because the needs are so great, and we learned that from other social movements like the civil rights movement and so forth. At some point, they form a critical mass, so they reach a tipping point. So laws are changed or behaviors are changed. And we really need to have more and more BAM initiatives in universities, in churches, in NGO organizations, in businesses, in investment groups, and so forth. So together we can form an ecosystem that can become a critical mass, so we can start seeing changes of industries, of cities, and of nations. Of course, and this is not going to happen today, but what we do today can set the stage for generations to come.
Yes. Yeah. And that's so important. It's passing the baton. So good. So how may people want to learn about BAM? Where do they go if they want to learn more about getting involved? And how can they connect with you and BAM Global? Got any tips, suggestions?
Yeah, we do have a virtual global congress late April. So check bamcongress.org. There, you can also check businessasmission.com, which is the biggest resource directory in the world when it comes to BAM material. Tunehag.com has BAM stuff in 21 languages if you want to brush up your Vietnamese or Turkish or whatever your favorite language is. Yeah, join us for the BAM Global Congress, and you can learn more, and you can connect also with the movement globally, and check the websites I mentioned.